A Master of the Macabre. Remembering Vincent Price by Michael Summers. I've mentioned many times that it was my mother, God rest her soul, who first opened the creaking door and gently pushed me into the world of horror. She didn't do it with lectures or fairy tales. She did it with the glow of late-night television, the warm scent of popcorn filling the living room, and that half smile that said, "This is going to be good, kid." It was also her who first introduced me to the velvet-voiced prince of elegant terror himself, Vincent Price. I can't say for sure what the first Vincent Price film I saw was. Memory tends to fog over the really important moments, as if protecting them in a thin veil of mist. But if I had to bet, I'd say it was The Fly, 1958. He wasn't the monster. He wasn't even the lead. But the moment he stepped into a scene, he owned it. There was something almost hypnotic about him. He didn't need to raise his voice to command your attention. He just had to let it curl around the words like smoke. And when the film ended, I didn't just turn off the set and go to bed. No, I sat there in the blue light of the TV, heart pounding, hooked like a fish. And then I started to chase him. First came House of Wax, 1953, a movie that slithered into my bones. Price's Henry Jared didn't just scare me, he fascinated me. He was the sculptor of death, calm and smooth, moving through his wax museum with the grace of a man hosting a dinner party for corpses. Then there was The Tingler, 1959, William Castle's beautifully ridiculous masterpiece where the monster wasn't just on the screen. It was, supposedly, in the theater with you. The film might have been hokey, sure, but Vincent, he was a master conductor. And we were the orchestra, screaming on cue. By the 1960s, Price was everywhere. Some of those films were serious, dripping with gothic dread. Others were, well, a little sillier, but no less magical. The Pit and the Pendulum, 1961. The Mask of the Red Death, 1964. The Raven, 1963, a horror comedy romp with Peter Lorre and Boris Karloff that leaned more toward Halloween Party Funhouse than Edgar Allan Poe's original Nightmare. The Comedy of Terrors, The House on Haunted Hill, The Abominable Dr. Phibes, and Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine. Oh yes, he even did that one. Price never pretended to be above the camp. He embraced it. Whether he was playing a grieving madman, a satanic villain, or a suave gentleman who might or might not be about to slit your throat, he did it with that same delicious theatricality. The truth is, Vincent Price didn't just act in horror films. He elevated them. He made even the silliest plot lines feel like Shakespearean tragedy performed in a mausoleum at midnight. And then, as if film wasn't enough, his voice came for us too. Vincent's voice was made for the dark. It was made for creaking doors, fog-slicked streets, and whispering things that should not be whispered. When I first heard A Hornbook for Witches, 1969, it felt like someone had found a way to record Halloween night itself. Then came Witchcraft Magic, an adventure in demonology, a spoken word album that wasn't quite sermon, wasn't quite performance. It was ritual. It was Vincent Price standing at the crossroads between horror and history, telling us about old devils as if he'd shared a drink or two with them himself. Years later, he lent that same voice to something unexpected but unforgettable. Thriller. That laugh at the end. Oh, you know it. The kind that bubbles up from the crypt. A laugh that dances between playful and terrifying. It was the perfect punctuation to Michael Jackson's masterpiece. That cackle might as well be the sound of horror itself, forever echoing through time. But here's the thing about Mr. Price, he wasn't just the face of 1,000 nightmares. He wasn't a ghoul. He wasn't some shadow haunting a soundstage. He was, in truth, a cultured gentleman, a painter, a collector of fine art, a man who can speak about Goya and Van Gogh with the same reverence he gave Poe and Lovecraft. When he wasn't scaring us on screen, he was guiding others into the beauty of brushstrokes and canvases. He even helped establish the Vincent Price Art Museum in California, because horror may have been his stage, but art was his heartbeat. And then there was cooking. Yes, Mr. Price, the man who terrified generations, was also a gourmand. He and his wife Mary wrote a treasury of great recipes, a cookbook that was less boil and serve, and more, let's dine like European royalty in a haunted castle. He cooked the way he acted, with elegance, confidence, and a hint of theatrical flair. I like to imagine him in the kitchen, a silk apron instead of a velvet cloak, carefully stirring a sauce that smelled like heaven while a thunderstorm rolled outside. Vincent gave me more than chills down my spine. Through his films, his recordings, and the rich tapestry of his cultured life, he gave me an understanding of what horror could be. It wasn't just blood and guts. It was performance. It was art. It was the thrill of standing at the edge of something dark and liking it. I'm not alone in my praises of Mr. Price. Far from it. The echo of his influence has rippled through generations of artists, like a whisper passed down through haunted corridors. One of his most famous admirers was a young, strange, wide-eyed kid from Burbank, California. A kid who would grow up to become one of the most recognizable names in dark cinema, Tim Burton. Burton didn't just enjoy Vincent Price, he worshipped him. He saw in Price what I had seen sitting cross-legged in front of the television as a child. That perfect marriage of elegance and unease, the waltz between humor and horror, the velvet glove wrapped around a skeletal hand. Price wasn't just a man to Burton, he was an idea. In 1982, Burton paid homage the best way he knew how, through film. His short black and white, stop-motion gem, simply titled Vincent, is part love letter, part fever dream. It tells the story of a young boy named Vincent Malloy who adores the works of Vincent Price so deeply that he begins to become the characters Price once embodied. His world shifts around him, melts into cobwebs and graveyards, into Poe-like narrations and melancholy soliloquies. And who narrated it? None other than Vincent Price himself. The film is dramatic, tragic, and Poe-like in its bones, but there's also a sly wink buried in the gloom. Burton knew exactly what Price represented. The beauty of the macabre, the theater of dread, performed with a raised eyebrow and a little tongue-in-cheek. Watching Vincent feels like stepping into the daydream of every kid who grew up loving horror, who fell asleep imagining themselves walking through the misty sets of old black and white chillers. And in a way, that's what Vincent Price was best at, inspiring imagination. He wasn't just a horror actor. He was a lighthouse in the fog for the oddballs, the night dwellers, the ones who found comfort in the dark. Tim Burton felt it. I felt it. Millions of others did too. Burton's admiration for Vincent Price didn't end with a short film. In 1990, he offered his idol one last curtain call, a quiet and poetic farewell. Edward Scissorhands wasn't just another film in Price's long career. It was a kind of elegy. A love letter dressed up in topiary and snow. In it, Vincent Price plays the inventor, a gentle, almost godlike figure who lives alone in a mansion that looks like it was carved straight out of a fairy tale and a fever dream. There, among whirring gears, churning gadgets, and creeping shadows, he creates Edward, a lonely boy born not of flesh, but of metal and wonder. Price's inventor is no mad scientist with wild hair and lightning rods. He's soft-spoken, kind, almost grandfatherly. And when he runs out of time and hands for his creation, he gives Edward the only thing he has left, those impossibly large, dangerously sharp scissors. That scene where the inventor gently lifts Edward's unfinished hands, promising to make him whole, has always carried a special weight. There's a tremor in Price's voice, a fragility you can feel down in your bones. It wasn't just acting. It was a man at the end of a legendary career, whispering a soft goodbye to the art form he had helped shape. Vincent Price passed away just 3 years later. But that moment, those few bittersweet minutes on screen, stand as a perfect epilogue to a life spent dancing between the light and the dark. Burton gave him the kind of farewell only a true fan could. One where the monster isn't a monster at all, just a lonely soul trying to give something beautiful to the world. My mother is long gone now, but whenever I see Vincent Price, whenever his long, elegant shadow flickers across a screen, I'm carried back to the night he came to my little hometown of Zanesville, Ohio. I was just a boy then, still wide-eyed, still learning the shape of the world. For me, the idea that someone like Vincent Price, this legend of midnight movies and whispered terrors, would step foot in my town felt impossible. But he did, and my mother, bless her soul, knew what it would mean to me. She bought 2 tickets for a one-night performance. And off we went. The theater was old, the kind of place where the floors creaked even when no one was walking on them, and the ceiling held the faint ghosts of cigarette smoke from decades past. We sat there in the dark, the stage a black mouth waiting to speak, and when he walked out, the crowd hushed as if some ancient priest had entered a cathedral. He read that night, not just any words, his own poetry and those of Edgar Allan Poe, words that slither and crawl. Words meant to be spoken aloud in a voice like his, rich, deliberate, wrapped in velvet and shadow. Every syllable was a match struck in a cold room. You could feel the heat of his presence, the weight of it, even from the cheap seats. When he finished, the audience roared. But he didn't just take his bows and vanish backstage like some distant Hollywood star. No, Vincent Price asked for the house lights to be brought up. "I'd like to talk with you all for a while," he said, smiling that unmistakable smile. And he did. He spoke to the crowd the way a favorite uncle might speak at a family gathering. Easy, warm, alive. Somewhere in that moment, my hand went up. Maybe it was trembling. I like to think it was. I told him that I had watched his films, that he was my favorite actor, and could I have an autograph? He looked at me, not through me, not past me, but right at me. And with that famous chuckle of his, he said, "How wonderful. Yes, I'll be glad to give you one. Just come backstage after we're done here, and I'll do that for you." True to his word, he waited. My mother and I made our way backstage, past the curtains and the quiet hum of a theater settling back into silence. Vincent Price didn't rush me. He didn't offer a quick scroll and send me on my way. He stood there, this towering figure from my black and white nightmares, and spent 15 whole minutes talking with me and my mother as though we mattered. As though we belonged in his strange, beautiful world. He gave us both autographs. His hand was steady, his voice kind. That signature wasn't just ink on paper. It was a key, a moment, a piece of a life I would carry with me forever. I still have mine, framed in glass alongside the yellowing article from the Times Recorder that covered his visit. It's one of my most prized possessions. It will never leave my hands, not while I'm still on this side of the mirror. Someday, when I pass through that dark glass we all must face, I like to think I'll see my mother again. And maybe, just maybe, Vincent Price will be there too, smiling that sly smile. Ready to tell us one more story, in that voice that sounds like midnight velvet itself.